Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. In this video, I'm going to be planting this Dragon Prince cryptomeria in this spot off the corner of this building. It is 25 degrees outside. I'll show you that on my phone. Hopefully it will focus on that. You can see it's actually 25 degrees outside as I'm starting to dig this hole for this cryptomeria. And I wanted to shoot a video on, you're going to see me planting things all winter long. And I wanted to shoot a video on how I go about deciding what I would or would not plant in this type of cold weather. 25, I understand it's not that cold for people who are in zone 5 or 6. And it's still actually not that cold for my area, my average low. I'm in zone 7B and our average low temperature is somewhere around 5 degrees. That happens about every third or fourth year here. It'll go somewhere below 5. Last winter, I don't think it went below 12 or 13 for the winter. The winter before that, we had some sub-zero nights. So it can get quite cold where I'm at, and probably consistently our average low is somewhere around in the upper 20s through the month of January. But I do have, over the years, from guaranteeing plants on landscape jobs, I've kind of figured out, what I would or wouldn't plant this time of year, knowing that I was going to have to, potentially come back and replace them in the spring or the following summer. So with that said, this cryptomeria right here, this Dragon Prince cryptomeria is a conifer. It's not a leafy plant. It's a, it's a needled evergreen, as you can see right there. Any of these plants that are hardy in my area or slightly more cold hardy than this, I'm definitely putting in the ground. This Goldie, Forever Goldie arborvitae would be another example of that. Any kind of conifer like this, I'm just not going to worry about it. I'm going to put it in the ground. I'm going to water it in well. I'm going to mulch the space. Not worried about that one at all. My clay soils here, I'm amending with some compost. This year I'm going to have some roots to deal with, I think, on pretty much every hole I dig out here. But I'm going to get this hole dug real quick. One of the issues in the winter time that can be worse than the rest of the year, especially in my clay soils here, is that when I dig a hole, I'm digging a bit of a clay pot and water can find its way in there. So I'm digging a collection spot for whatever winter rains we get to potentially drown my plants. And that can be an issue for some plants. As long as I mound this up a little bit when I plant it, I don't plant the thing too deep down into the ground. That shouldn't be an issue for this conifer. So the hole is dug here. I've got 2 big bags of compost out here on my driveway, and I'm just going to pour some of that onto this soil that I pulled out of the hole. It'll get mixed into it as I plant this cryptomeria here. So that kind of covers conifers. Conifers I'm just not that worried about in the winter time. These needled plants are pretty tough as long as they're hardy in your area. I wouldn't put a conifer that's only hardy into zone 7 in your zone 6 yard if you're able to dig in zone 6. I realize people watching this in zone 5, your ground's probably frozen from now for 5 or 6 months and you're not even going to consider planting. This video is mainly for people who can still dig holes. Conifers that are hardy in your area, put them in the ground. Just make sure you raise them up a little bit, and I'll show you that when I start planting him. Deciduous plants, as examples of that, deciduous shrubs or trees. This white wedding hydrangea, which was blooming beautifully just 2 weeks ago, the cold has knocked it back. Pot's actually frozen solid this morning. And this rose, I did a video on this It's a Breeze rose recently. These are super, super cold hardy deciduous shrubs. This is hardy up into zone 5. This is hardy up into zone 3 or 4, I think, on this rose. I'm in zone 7B. They lose their leaves, they go dormant. The winter's not stressing them at all. Dig the holes and put them in the ground, just don't plant them too deep. That's my rule on deciduous shrubs. I'm just not worried about. That's shrubs that lose their leaves in the wintertime. The ones that really, the shrubs that I'm more concerned about, I planted a camellia back here the other day, and it's a leafy evergreen shrub. Another example of that would be this gardenia. Gardenias are leafy evergreen shrubs. It's only hardy into my zone. And these are the ones that kind of concern me a little bit more when I plant them in November, December, and January, because the cold can have an impact on them. The main thing I'm looking for The reason I went ahead and planted that camellia, which does not like me very much this morning on a 25-degree morning, the reason I went ahead and planted it is because it had no growth on it. I had kept it outside in a container, let it kind of go dormant as the nights had gotten cooler, and the plant was ready. It was acclimated to the weather that I had, if that makes any sense. If you go somewhere and you take something out of a cold frame that hasn't gone dormant and you take it home, put it in the ground, and then it sees 23 or 22 degrees or 18 or whatever, that plant's going to get hammered. That plant could be in trouble. And so with that gardenia right there, which is only hardy in the zone 7 where I'm at, it's not any more cold hardy than where the area that I'm in. Has no problem with the cold, but it would if I had been babying it. And so as long as it's a non-babied leafy evergreen shrub that's hardy in your area, stick the thing in the ground. If you get a really quick snap of super cold weather on something like that, you might want to go out and throw a sheet or something over it. And that would be the same thing with that camellia. It's 25 this morning, not worried about 25, but if I planted that 2 or 3 days ago, if it had jumped down to like 15 or something crazy like that, I would have probably had a sheet on that thing last night. And not so much because that plant can't take 15, it's just, it may just not have been ready for 15. So, okay, that kind of covers leafy evergreen shrubs. So conifers, we're putting them in the ground. Deciduous shrubs, we're definitely putting in the ground. We're making decisions on leafy evergreen shrubs based on, are they acclimated? Were they outside? Have they already experienced cold weather? That kind of thing. Don't take something out of a cold frame or a greenhouse and go put it in the ground. Bad news. Okay, the last group is herbaceous perennials. This is a hosta right here that's gotten whacked in the last couple nights. It'll be, it's going to sleep. It's going to be back hiding in this pot for the winter pretty soon. Herbaceous perennials I typically just don't plant in November, December, and January. I might plant this hosta. This hosta is hardy all the way to Canada. It's not going to be a hardiness issue with this hosta. My biggest issue, especially in my clay soils, is that I will end up drowning them. When they go to sleep in the winter, they can't use any water, they can't do any rooting, they're just sitting there possibly in some swampy, muddy soil that I just created by mixing it all up and making it more absorbent. The soil's now gathering more water easily. And that can be problematic for herbaceous perennials. If I was in more well-draining soils, let's say coastal North Carolina or South Carolina or along the Gulf Coast, someplace that had sandier soils, I might go ahead and continue to plant perennials. But here, like I say, in my area, I'll wait until about mid-March and I'll start planting perennials. I'd like to get all the things that go dormant, like this hosta or daylilies or the many other things, astilbes and whatever else that you can think of that dies to the ground in the wintertime, coneflowers and black-eyed Susans, and I could go on and on and on. Those things I'll plant from about March 15th in my area till about, the end of August, mid-September. I want to get some roots under them before they go dormant. And so, like I say, I'll do a hard pass on these. They're super cold hardy. This thing can actually stay frozen in this container. And so it's not the cold that is the issue. I think it's more that space is going to stay too wet potentially. That's why I'm not planting them now. So I think that kind of covers the different groups of plants. But like I say, you're going to see me plant all winter long, and there's probably some confusion as to how I'll go about, and I'll talk about that as I'm planting different things during the winter time. But I am not overprotecting my plants before I put them in the ground. If I overprotect them, then I'm probably just going to have to protect them the rest of the winter. Once you kind of dedicate yourself to overprotecting them, then you kind of have to carry them through the winter in a container and then plant them in the spring. Otherwise, they are vulnerable to getting whacked. So this cryptomeria, I brought this back from Mobile a week or so ago, and it is actually frozen in the container. That'll tell you. There it is. It's absolutely frozen in the container. And I have done this many times. I'm still going to cut one side of these roots right here. This is going to look mean. All those kinds of things that people might point out. But it's not going to cause him a problem at all. But he was kind of root bound on one side, so I just cut the roots on that one side. When I place it into the hole like this is really important in winter planting. I need to make sure you can use your shovel and lay it next to the hole and just make sure the height of that root ball is over the height of that shovel, laying next to the hole. That'll mean the shovel's about inch and a half thick, the handle is. And so that means the plant's up at least that much. So I got that. Like I say, this compost will get mixed in to this clay as I work it back around the hole. It's kind of important this time of year to make sure we're getting most of the air pockets out of the soil, because like I say, that'll just be collection area for water, which could potentially drown our plant in the winter time. I'm going to water this in well. After I stomp this soil down, I'm going to water him in well, and then I need to get this area mulched, because mulch is going to be the thing that insulates these roots. In my area, the ground's never going to freeze more than about 1.5 inches or 2 inches deep, and so the part that's going to freeze in my yard is just going to be the mulch, not the ground itself. Those of you obviously north of me, the ground's freezing very solid and you can't do any of this, but here in my area, I can knock the crust off the mulch and keep planting all winter long. Okay, I'm making sure that I can fill that root ball with the side of my foot right there, that it's sticking up above the grade. So that's it. All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching this video. Like I say, you're going to see me planting in this yard all winter long. I've got lots of pieces available here to do that with, and I'm not babying them so that so they're acclimated to this air temperatures already. Thank you very much for watching.